This is why I've owned 6 Porsche GT3 RS's. I might own the most out of any single person that's not a dealership in the world, I feel like. This is pretty wild. I don't even know how I got to this point. But I'm gonna tell you about every single car with a lot of video of it and explain why I've bought and sold and bought and sold and bought and sold GT3 RS's. First and foremost, if you can't tell, I like Porsches. Now, I do have flags of many different companies. I have a BMW flag. Let me see, I think I have it in here. I do not have it in here. Where did I put them? I think they're over here. I don't know where I put them, but wait, where are they? I have a BMW flag, I have a Lamborghini flag, I have a McLaren flag. I've had a lot of the brands that I've owned. Porsche is just up in the garage right now. I do have a lot more Porsche stuff around the house because I can never say no to buying stuff. So the first Porsche GT3 RS I got into. Now, prior to having a GT3 RS, I did have a GT3. So that was my first taste into Porsche. That was because I had a Lamborghini Huracan, a 580. It was my black car that I showed you guys before. I had that one, but I had wrapped it blue. And then I traded that into a Porsche dealership for a 2019 Porsche GT3. Now, if any of you get mad at me for how I say Porsche, people get mad when you say Porsche. People get mad when you say Porsche. How am I supposed to say it? I have a friend who's a driver for Porsche, professional race car driver for Porsche, and he says Porsche. So that's how I'm gonna go for it. Bought a 2019 GT3. It was white, it had bucket seats, it had 1,400 miles on it. Incredible. MSR, I can't remember MSRP, but I paid $150,000 for it, and that was a steal. That same car, even now, would be like 190, and like maybe a year ago, that car's 220,000. Now, I bought that GT3, and I sold that car probably 2 months later because I freaking loved it, but I was like, I'm not the type of person who just wants the GT3. I'm the type of person that's like, I want it all. I want all the downforce. I want the big wing. I want everything. So give me the GT3 RS. And at the time, the GT3 RS's were not that expensive in comparison where they are even now. So the GT3 RS's were back then, I found at West Coast Exotic Cars, it was a GT Silver 2016 3RS with carbon ceramic brakes, with the carbon bucket seats, 3,000 miles on it, for $174,000. Now, like I said, I paid $150 for my GT3, and so I reached out to West Coast Exotic Cars, which the first time I dealt with them, which I bought a lot of cars from them now, and Hunter made me an incredible offer because the market was going like this. It was an easy buy for them. So I sold them my GT3 for essentially the same price that I bought it for, and I bought that new GT3 RS for $174,000. Now I had to pay for transportation and whatnot, but I got that car shipped from California to Atlanta, have all the footage, and that feeling of the first drive in that 3RS, when you just hear the induction noise from the air intakes, from the rear wheel wells, the feeling inside, the wing when you look in the rearview mirror, absolutely incredible. Now, it was a little bit different because one, this like sounds a little different. The technology is a little bit different. You have CarPlay and stuff in the 19s, you don't in the 16, but that was my first one. I had that car for 6 months. I took it to the racetrack, I took it to Barber Motorsports Park. That was I did tracking plenty of times before, but I had a lot of fun tracking that car at Barber. I put 3,000 miles on it. By the end of the 6 months, I had 6,000 miles on it total, and I decided to sell the car. Now, the reason I decided to sell the car is because the car market shifted. Like I said, I'd paid $174,000. I sold that car for roughly $205,000 6 months later with 3,000 more miles on it. So I made $30,000 in just 6 months for driving a car. That was when the car market went like this, and it became a great opportunity to, you know, buy and sell cars if you know the right people and have the right connections. So what did I sell the car for? I actually sold it to get 2 cars. I sold it to get an Audi R8 and a Porsche Macan Turbo as my daily, because at the time I had a Ford Raptor. I don't remember what I had. I had so many cars, but I got the Porsche Macan and the R8 for the same price that I had gotten out of the GT3 RS. So that's why I sold it, because I can make the $30,000 as well as I can add on a daily that was fast and fun as the Macan Turbo, which ended up working nice. GT3 RS number 2. I actually need to pull this up on my phone and see timeline wise where this came in. So I got the GT3, got the 3RS. Oh, my Imola Red M3 or Imola Red, whatever. Next one that I bought is, I don't know if any of you guys know about this. This car was sick, kind of. Probably wouldn't buy it again. I bought, it was actually another YouTuber's car, a 2019 GT3 RS that was black, but this car had the craziest aero on it. It had full 1016 kit on it, had think it had a Dundon kit. It had a top mount swan neck spoiler that was 2 times the size of the stock one, which if you guys know, that one's already huge. It was black with matte PPF on the entire car. It had carbon buckets with the green inserts on the inside, lizard green. The calipers were lizard green, and it had aftermarket wheels. It had GT3 mirrors. Like, these were like bolted into the door, and they were like metal. They were crazy. I think it had the carbon hood. Was it a Wysock? It had a carbon hood, but it was not a Wysock. It had the lizard green matched cage inside, and then I'm trying to look at it. It had this crazy exhaust from Valtronic. It had sport headers. And the center exhaust, it was crazy. Had orange accents on it. That car was honestly sick. That wing just was crazy. And so that one I bought, I can't remember how much I paid for that, but that car had 30,000 miles, right around 30,000 miles. So I bought it, and then I kind of figured out as I was buying it that the motor had been replaced, which is not a bad thing, because early, like 2014 to 16 GT3s had an issue with the motors where they had, I don't know the exact, I don't know, it's a lifting problem or something where the motors blow, and I know many people's motors are blown, and that one had the motor blown and the motor replaced. So that kind of scared me. Now you would think, some people would sit there and think like, oh, well, that's actually good, you have a brand new motor. But then I learned the last owner drove it a lot, and it had some wear and tear on it. I had to get new headlights. I replaced the full PPF on the front. The windshield needed to be replaced. I did a lot to get that car back, but I got it for a good price. I think it was like $220,000, I think it was. For 2019 was incredible, but there's something that I learned over time with Porsches is that miles are very bad for resale on cars. I don't even know how long I had that car, but I ended up getting rid of it because of the mile thing. I took it on some rallies, I did some driving, probably put 3,000 miles on it. But really that motor just started to worry me. And also the fact that it wasn't like a super OEM car. I started to lean more into wanting factory looking cars rather than like the aftermarket looking cars for Porsche specifically. So I sold that car and got a GT4 actually. Big change. GT4 is fun, but wasn't really for me. In this time I'm moving through cars, the car market has changed a lot, and it was still going up, and I could either sell the car for exactly what I paid or make a few $1,000s on it with the relationship I had. So it was actually not a bad setup. So I sold that one, got the GT4. I didn't have the GT4 for too long, and there's a couple cars in between, whatever. And then here comes Porsche GT3 RS number 3. And that is gonna be, I bought an Ultra, did I buy an, was it that one? I got the GT4 and it was not a 911 to me. It was not the same, and I needed another 3RS. And I drove up to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Porsche Pittsburgh, and they had an ultraviolet purple GT3 RS with buckets, and the purple was sick. I always wanted purple, and I drove up there 9 hours, picked it up, drove it home, and it was snowing on the way home, and I had Cup 2s on. It was a crazy long drive with snow and rain. I got back into that car because having the Cayman made me realize that I like the 911 better as a platform, and I wanted to track it. So I had the Ultraviolet car, tracked it many times, did a bunch of stuff in it, freaking drove it a ton. And ultimately, why I sold it was at the time I wanted to shift money into some different avenues, and I think we had just bought our house, and I was like, you know what, I'd rather have cash right now because I had to put so much money down on our house. And so I sold, and another reason actually was the front bumper had a GT3 Cup bumper. There's no accents on the Carfax, but it made me believe that it had an accident, because why would you have a GT3 Cup bumper on there? Like, it had a slit, and I could not find the GT3 Cup tow hook. It was weird. We couldn't figure out why. We did research for 6 months trying to get that tow hook. We couldn't get it. And ultimately I was like, it's the right move for the house. And then 2, this isn't like a long-term car that I want to keep, even though I don't keep anything long-term, with that bumper. And there's a few other weird things. And so I was like, the wheels had some chips on it. And I was like, you know what? I don't know. It made sense financially to do it. So I sold that car, and I ended up, I can't remember what I got into. I got into something less expensive. I still had a fun car, but it was less expensive. I think it was my AMG GTR. It was the GTR. So when did I get another one? This is where the one got added in that I was not expecting. Well, I was expecting. So I'd gone through a bunch of cars. It's been probably a year and a half, and I wanted another GT3 RS. I found one at a dealer, and I was gonna go buy it. I was gonna trade in my R8 for it. I drove all the way there, test drove it. The car was beat up. The front bump, the hood needed to be repainted. They needed new headlights. It needed a new windshield. The windshield was terrible. The seats were coming apart. Somebody tracked it, just abused it. It only had 11,000 miles. And so I was like, I don't like this car. Honestly, I made the decision not to make an emotional decision, just buy it. Even if they were trying to offer me like 15 grand off. I said no. They had another car, an Ultraviolet car, couldn't make a good enough deal on it. They wanted too much. And then they had a lava orange car. Now, I've never really been a big fan of lava orange because the orange is not orange to me. It's like a red orange, but it was a decent deal, but it had comfort seats. But it was a good deal, but it had comfort seats. So I was like, I don't know if I want this car. Maybe if I can find a pair of buckets for sale in the secondary market, I'll do it. So I did finding buckets on the secondary market. So I bought the lava orange car, bought the buckets for like $12,000 or something. It was crazy, the buckets. They were off a Wysock car from a local place in Atlanta when I was there. Now, I only had that car for literally less than 2 months, and that is because I bought it, but then a local friend of mine sent me this exact car. Where is it? This exact car going up for sale from a friend in Nashville, Tennessee. He had this car and he was looking to sell it because he had an allocation for a new GT3RS and a new GT3 RS. So he was doing a pass-through deal at the dealership where essentially he was selling it to the dealership to retain tax credit so that when the new cars come in, he doesn't have to pay tax on that. And so we did the deal that way. Not really happy with how that deal came out. They offered me really, really low on my GT3 RS, the lava orange car, and like to the point where I was not really happy at the end of the day because I was kind of like forced into buying like the deal. I had to do the deal because I already told him I'd buy this car. We agreed on a price. It was $225, and I couldn't back out because he'd already said it was sold and I had already said I'm gonna buy it, but I kept saying it was contingent on what they give me for trade-in, and they ended up giving me like the craziest low number and selling it for like 30,000 above that. And it was kind of a little, I didn't like it. I was in a bad spot. Ultimately, after that, the sixth time is me buying this car back again. So I've really only owned 5 of them. It's still, I think, the most out of freaking anybody. Reason I bought it back, or reason I sold it in the first place, I was living in the city actually, and it was just sitting in my parking garage. There's nowhere to drive it. We weren't doing track days. It was because of where we were living. We were in a high rise, and I was parking on the 6th floor of a parking deck, and like, there's nowhere to go rip it around in the city. Whereas where I am now, there's a lot more areas to go ahead and drive it, and that's ultimately why I ended up buying it again. And just because I know that Porsches are for me. Now, am I gonna keep this car forever? That's the hope. Is there a chance that I sell it? Probably. That's how it rolls with me. Now I've slowed down a lot because the car market is not as favorable as it was before to the seller. Prices have gone way down, and you'll lose a lot more money now than you would not too long ago. So there's the story of my 6 GT3RS's. They are one of the best cars ever. I might be biased and everybody says that they're overhyped. Sure, they might be overhyped because everybody's talking about them, but they're not overhyped in the fact that they're bad. They're overhyped because they are actually that good. They are that good. And I've owned 6 of them. I've owned probably more than anybody. So I can tell you that they are that good. I've owned Lamborghinis, I've owned McLarens, I've owned Mercedes, I've owned whatever. I've owned 35 cars. They're worth the hype. They're expensive and everybody loves them, but there's a reason I love them, because they're so good. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please like down below. I will see you guys in the next video. If you guys are enjoying these videos and you enjoyed this channel, make sure you guys subscribe down below, turn on notifications. We are almost at 30,000 subscribers. We might have hit it by the time, but this is a strong army here on this channel. And thank you guys so much for supporting.